This video right here is called Does Dark and Small Kit Boxes Work? Okay, before we get started, I do want to mention that you got to have the proper stock, okay, you guys? To get the best benefits out of this, you got to have proper stock. You have to know the physical part and then the psychological part. You know, those birds have got to be in pretty good physical condition for you to stimulate the birds and so on and so on. This is basically a video on the psychological part, and John, you know, is going to give us his expertise this morning. All right, John, we're going to kick it off pertaining to what stimulates the birds to get the propensity to roll, you know, to get them to roll more, John. Okay, John, let's start off with the dark pins, John, the effects of the dark pin.
Okay, you know, it's been said a lot of times that dark pins help stimulate pigeons. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think we have to be careful for sure here in California when we get the dark pins, but there's still got to be some circulation of air. You don't want the birds to get too hot on the inside. And I really believe that if you keep them in the dark for a couple days and then fly them, they get stimulated. Also, they might get stimulated a lot, so if you got some birds that you think might be bumpers, it's always good to hand toss those. But I really think there's something to the dark kit boxes. That's items, you know, that people have put, you know, a rubber snake in a kit box. They put balloons in, anything to get the birds excited. I think, you know, it all works. Once in a while, I think after a while, if you put snakes or balloons in, pretty soon the birds would get used to it and it wouldn't stimulate them. You know that the birds need to be stimulated to roll properly, or to roll, to get excited, to get the big breaks. So that's our beginning, so we'll take it from there.
Okay, well, let's bounce off what Bill Pensum said, you know, because, you know, he's quite a guy, you know what I mean? He knew a lot about birds. You know, we could use different people, you know, too. But we're going to use the Monty Nebo yo-yo system as well. We're going to talk about all that. You guys, so stay tuned. Don't channel out. Bill Pensum claims that the dark, small kit box causes them to fly tighter together, John. Do you agree with that?
It helps for kidding. I think a lot of the guys in Europe, also, they have all their perches on the back wall where they're not across from each other. They seem to think that that works a little better. I think there's a lot of things that you can do that can work out. And that's one thing too. I think that's a point well taken, John, that a dark kit box, probably the birds kit better together. And remember, in a dark kit box, then you don't get, if you fly cocks and hens together, they'll just sit on the shelf and more than likely they won't mate up.
Well, let me retract a little bit, John. That Bill Pensum said that the small kit boxes causes them to fly tighter together. We both agree on this.
Yes.
Okay, and then but there's little hang-ups that go with it. But he also said that the dark kit box, okay, you know, causes the birds to not only fly closer together, but it causes some confusion when you release them. And at the same time, because they're flying so close to one another, it stimulates them to roll together in concert performance. Do you agree with that?
There's a lot of good points to that. I know a lot of people don't do that. They use different things to stimulate, change the feed, pull away the water. I mean, there's a lot of little things that people do. They'll go out at midnight, feed them a handful of peas. You got to figure out what actually works for your birds.
Right.
But trying the dark kit boxes is probably a good idea for everybody to try and see how it works.
Well, you know, it's really funny, Johnny, that maybe people don't talk about it as much. That's why we're making this video, you guys. You know, it's for the beginners. You know, because we always know that the mature fancier, you know, the professional, the competitor, you know, he's going to do his thing. But if you notice it, that Jerry has the small kit boxes in the dark, so does Abu Abada. So even Tim Decker has them semi dark. You know what I mean? They're not really big kit boxes, and they're very effective. But John, moving it along here, and I want to put structure to the video. You do believe in lockdown. I know you do.
Well,
can you explain a little bit more, Johnny?
Like, I fly a hardcore or, Pinson roots type of bird. They're strong. If you get strong pigeons and you fly them every day, you're just going to take all the roll out of them. You've got to come up with a method, maybe rest them for 2 days, then fly them on the third day. Some of the other families of birds need to be flown more often. If you don't fly some of the families often, you might get them to come out too hot out of the kit box and you're going to get some accidents. Again, it all depends on the type of bird you got, and like I said, this is basically for the newbies that are in this sport, and try to get you to improve your birds a little bit. So that's why we're kicking this around. So just some ideas that we're going to put down here that you might try. Some of them will work, some of them may not work, but consistency is also very, very important. If you change your feed every day on your bird, and one day you got them in the dark, the next day you got them in the light, if you're going to do something, you got to stick with it and work it out.
But you do practice the lockup.
Yes, I do.
Okay. I honestly believe, John, that it by housing them, locking them up, you know what I mean, and the dark pin and the small pin, the combination of these stimulants, you know what I mean, has an effect on the performance. It does. It seems to release the propensity to roll, you know what I mean, but like you said, if you don't house them up, if you don't try methods, they can go seldom on you. But there's some families that don't need none of this stuff, John.
I understand. Now, remember, again, guys, now this again is for the guys that are getting into the hobby, that are experimenting. Remember, in order to get pigeons to roll, first they have to be capable of rolling. So you got to start with some pigeons that can roll. And then, like I said, anything that stimulate them, can get them going. And a lot of times you'll see that you'll stimulate them, they'll come out hot, they'll go out and do some breaks for you. And then later on, maybe after 10, 15 minutes, they'll calm down, they'll quit doing whatever they're doing. And that's another trick that you got to work on, is see how to do something to stimulate the birds to keep them rolling for the whole 20 minutes, if at all possible.
Okay. I think that when you do a combination of all these things that we're mentioning, and it keeps them rolling, plus, getting on a regimen of flying them all the time.
Yeah.
But due to these hawks, it's devastating pertaining to this type of system
there's
of
not much
flying.
you can do about that. It's just that we're living in that area. You just seen a little while ago, I flew a kit and a falcon went right through the middle of them. There's nothing you can do about that.
Right. Okay, John, we're going to move it along. I hope you guys are tuning in with this video. John, you're going to explain a little bit about the alternating of feeds and stuff like that, and then plus the method of how you get them to, plus everything that you try, plus more on the feeding. Can you share a little bit right now, John? That you got your stuff right there?
What I do, once I get a kit that, say, of the A-team, your good bird that you're trying to make the competition kit out of. In my line of birds, if you were to fly them every day, you're going to have a problem. They need to be rested in between the flies. Now, I got turned on to a system that Monty Neville came up with, or maybe he I don't know if he came up with it, but he used to do it, and it was called a yo-yo system. And I asked Monty, what does that consist of? He said, well, the first day after you fly them, you give them a full ration, however, whatever you might feed them as a full ration. And he says the next day, he says you give them about a 5/8 to a 3/4 ration. And then on the third day, or the second day after you've flown them, what you do, you give them about a half a normal ration, and you add some vitamins and minerals to it. And I'm going to kind of give you an idea of how I do that. And if you got that type of family, you might give that a try. It seems to work for me. My birds can fly high. And with this yo-yo program, once I implement it, but remember, if you're going to do something like that, you have to be consistent. You can't say, oh, what I do yesterday, I forgot, so I'll just feed them a full can today. You've got to be really consistent. So I'm just going to kind of run through that for a second here, just for fun.
Okay.
This is what I feed 20 birds. I feed this can almost up about 7/8 full. That would be a full ration. Now, what I did in here, I got a little bit of a half ration. So then what I do, I use a larger can. I dump the half ration in there, and then I use mineral grit. And what I do with the mineral grit, I take a teaspoon of the mineral grit and I throw that in there. And then what's been working real good for me, then what you do, just put a little tiny bit, a couple shots of some kind of oil, like this is wheat germ, boom, boom, give them a couple shots in there. And then I use this vitamins here that I guess you can use a lot of different kind. This one is it's a German thing. It's kind of a powdered Jed's carries it. Very, very good for me anyway, because it sticks to the grain. And then I thought I brought a little grit out. I use a little handful of grit that I also throw in. I left it inside, and then I just take this can,
shake it up
real good, get the stuff to all stick, and then you feed them, and then that's it for that day, and then you fly them the next day. And it's a system that really works for me. It keeps my birds down. I got plenty of roll on my birds, but they have a tendency to want to fly high. So if I keep them consistent on the yo-yo program, they stay down. So if you have a problem with your birds, they're always flying high on you, give that a try. And it really worked for me, and my birds are very strong, so it would probably also work for anyone else that wanted to try it.
Yeah, because you are a Pensumite, and the Pensums are much stronger character pigeons, okay? But, John, alternating has to happen with these performing birds because of the adaptability that you know they get adapted to it. Do you agree with these things, John? Can you share a little bit for the beginner?
Sure what you mean. Do they adapt to anything?
I mean, they after they get used to it. That's what that word I'm trying to use it. That they get used to it, and that's why you have to alternate.
Yeah,
change
that's why you alternate sometimes. But I think consistency is also a very, very important thing.
Like anything else.
Yeah, and
to what we're talking
this yo-yo program has really worked good for me. I can't complain because, like I said, I fight the battle all the time with birds flying high. And young birds, I don't put them on this program. The young birds get regular feed. I feed basically wheat. Basically, I made a mix with milo and wheat and some of the other small stuff. And remember, young birds, fly them as often as you can. And when your birds come into the roll, well, then you got to start handling them a little differently. And with me, it's worked pretty good, this yo-yo system. Sometimes I've been too lazy, but it's all the stuff takes work. And as you notice, when you look on the guys that do well, you know they're working it. You can't just come home and unlock these pigeons and let them out every day and fly them and fly them. You've got to pay attention, and it's a lot of work. If you want to get a good kid of birds together, it takes an extreme amount of work, and for sure now we're trying to fly around the hawks, and winter's coming on again, so you know what that means.
Okay, John, that's pretty good. And John, mention a little bit about the weather, because you've seen it, man. We've gone out in the morning, and the time frame in the morning, and the weather, it's like perfect weather to fly the Birmingham rollers, and they put on a show, you know? Yeah,
early morning flying is probably the best because, again, with the BOPs probably aren't too bad early in the morning. And again, like what we have here in California, and I guess across most of the United States, the summers are good and hot. So it's always nice to get the birds out before the heat comes and before the thermals come up so the red tails start flying, because I don't know where everybody else lives, but around here, red tails are horrible. And it used to be, people used to say, oh man, red tails don't chase pigeons. Try my house, and you'll find out a little different. But it's just getting
every
tougher.
person has to find out
It's
what
tougher.
what time frame to fly, and then like myself, I have to fly in the late evenings because of my job.
Right.
And I got the dreaded S. You guys already know what the dreaded S is, where they fly further and further from the house, and they're not even set up to roll.
Yeah,
you know?
Get a kid in the dreaded S, that becomes pretty difficult to break them up.
Yeah, and then if you fly them late in the evenings, and a hawk comes, they're done. They're gone into the night.
Well, I've done quite a bit of judging in my lifetime with these pigeons, and two guys that have qualified both times when I judged was Don Olette was one. He liked to fly just about the sun was going down. And, for me, that's kind of scary. I also have a pair of red tails that live in the neighbor's tree here, and they're kind of keep the cooper away, maybe. And in the evening time, if I fly late, those suckers come in at 100 miles an hour, and not that they're going after the pigeons, but it's just enough to drive them up. And so I don't fly mine late at night because of these red tails, because I don't want to be out there with my lights on and trying to get the birds
Like
to
me.
come down.
But it does stimulate them.
Yeah, and I think that's what
It
some
really
of the
does,
guys
you guys.
like to
It does
fly at
stimulate
dusk.
them.
You know that some of the guys are doing that, and it seems to work. It seems to stimulate the pigeons.
It releases the
I don't know
propensity to
what
roll.
Again, it's all experiments. What works for you might not work for the next guy. And if you got a more of a softer family of pigeons, I know that a lot of them, like, you know, Abel Abera, a good friend of ours, I think he flies 3 days and then he rests them for 1 day and then he flies the competition the next day. But like when you got to figure out what works. Like with my family, that wouldn't work at all. They have to be rested for 2 or 3 days to stimulate them.
I really like the morning fly, but because of my job. But the morning, you know, it's nice and cool, and they got a nice little breeze up there, and they don't fly that dreaded S, and they fly to set up to
See,
roll
that's
together.
strange that you're saying that, because I've never seen a kit that flies the dreaded S and then you let them go at a different time of the day. But again, here's Johnny's making a statement that works for him. So at night, if your birds are flying that dreaded S pattern, don't fly them. It doesn't do any good
you're a
whatsoever.
goner. You're a goner, and if the hawk comes, you're gone. But the morning, I've seen some of the best kits ever in my life in the morning when they catch that perfect weather. You know, like a perfect wave, you guys. Just a perfect. Well, you've seen it, John.
Well, sure.
Perfect morning,
Yeah,
and they
if
got a
we
nice
get a-
little breeze, and boom, there they go. And that really matters. That stimulates them, as far as I'm
and
concerned.
it seems like if the weather is moist, we got some overcast and some clouds, and it's a little moist, you know, and I think that's where a lot of you're seeing the big scores come out of Europe and stuff. Remember, that's the kind of weather they fly all the time.
So that's a plus for them.
Yeah, it's a plus, and we deal with this heat in the summer. I mean, we've had the last month or two has been hot, been 100 degrees almost every day. It's just tough. You got to get them out early, because most birds, you fly them in that heat, all they do is come down with their mouths open and want to get in there and get a drink of water.
Do you think that might have a mathematical change, John, if they brought birds from Europe or
Yeah, I
over
think so,
here?
and that's why
That's
maybe-
been some of the little
Yeah.
problems, I think.
And I think that's why some of the guys here that have tried the European birds haven't had luck. Lately, everybody's after the mason stuff. Seem to be having some luck with that.
We've seen the Masons before,
Yeah,
years ago.
they were here.
Chuck Sellers had some. I don't know if you guys know who Chuck Sellers is, but boy, those were nice pigeons.
Those were nice, deep-ass pigeons.
And fast, too. Okay, John, so we talked about the weather, the time frame, and also the age factor, where you talked about that, you know, I wouldn't highly recommend, you know, doing all these stimulus things. It's just better just to fly those young birds out and keep them in
Yeah,
control.
remember, your young birds, you know, if you could fly them twice a day if you got the time. But, you know, got to put some mileage on these birds, and that's what makes it kind of tough. And like I say, also, don't have more kits than what you can handle. I'm finding out that for myself. Like this year, I'm trying to fly 4 kits of young birds, even though I'm retired and have all day. But with the weather and then the wind comes up in the afternoon, and again, flying young birds in the wind is not going to help you much. That's how they're going to get all these bad habits of this S pattern, and whatever else you can have. So try not to fly your young birds in the wind. And if you live someplace where you have nothing but wind, well, you got to work with it, and you got to get the type of pigeons that can handle the wind.
You know, as we're moving it along, you know, we sort of had a slow beginning, but now we're picking it up. You know, talking about the dark pins, that we're not bouncing around anywhere, just everywhere. But the dark pins, you know, Pensum said that it keeps the pigeons from the corners.
Yeah,
you
from
know.
mating up. That's what we mentioned that. I think that's the one plus. You know, again, that's why some of the guys are flying the hens and the cocks separate. Some of the families that we have are very aggressive. The cocks become mature very young, and they want to mate. I've worked hard on mine. I like to fly in mixed kits, and I've worked real hard on those real young aggressive birds, the young aggressive cock birds. I try not to use them. I try to move them down the road, and I've done that now for about 10 years. And most of the cocks that are in my A team are very docile. They're almost like hens. Sometimes I make a mistake. You get one, you say, "Oh, you like to get a nice hen." You give away one, and it turned out to be a cock, or a cock turns out to be a hen. You know.
Yeah, I got you.
But if you got a real aggressive family, the dark pins will help. And also, like I say, you might want to try flying your cocks and hens separate.
Okay, since we're here, how about the molt? Does it delay the molt, John? The dark pins? Come on, John, give it to us. Come on, give some secrets out
I
there.
always thought that. I know what the Homer guys kind of do after the fly season in the spring. They put lights on their birds and they get them to molt.
Wow.
And by the time that fly season starts again in September, I think for the Homer guys, and they're done with the molt. If you don't, and some of the guys are after the, like say the World Cup fly, they're a good team. They've pulled 3 flights out of the end, and that gets them to molt faster. So if you want to try to get rid of the molt, there's a couple ideas. I think the dark pens, I don't really know because I'm really not too much into the dark pens, but I think that would delay the molt.
Yeah, it does. It does work. It does work. John, I think we covered a lot of things, you know. And
we try.
Is there anything you think that we can add pertaining to this other than that the Birmingham does adapt? It really does.
Yeah, you know.
That's why you got to move it around, you guys.
Some of the best advice that I was ever given, because I've tried a lot of little different things for the competition flies, and usually I've messed up quite a few times, to be honest with you. A good dear friend of ours, Tim Decker, he says, consistency, consistency, or he'll tell me, what'd you do this time to mess up your birds? So, you know, again, be consistent with whatever you do. And, you know, you might try that, like Brian McCormick told me one time, at midnight, before it flies, he goes out and throws a handful of peas to his birds. Well, I tried that too, and it messed me up. But you know,
Canary seeds.
It's experimental, guys. Yeah. You have to try to figure out for yourself. But like I say, pay attention to what works and what doesn't work. And you know, and you got to have the birds. If you can only fly on weekends, you got to have birds that only like to fly once a week. I mean, it's you kind of have to build a family of birds around yourself. And that's another good piece of advice, I think. And like I said, you know, young birds, feed them well, keep them flying. If you got a family like mine and they start elevating, well, then you know they're ready to cut the feed a little bit on them. But for sure, when you start out with really your young birds, feed them good, because they need to eat. And once you get your older birds, well, you know, like the yo-yo system works for me, it might not work for you. But if you have your birds are flying too high, I think that's a good suggestion to give that a try.
You know, as we're coming to a close, and then we're going to do a little bounce off too. One thing about Jerry Higgins and Norm Reed and some of the top guys that I've seen the way they fly their pigeons, and I've seen the condition of their pigeons. Jerry was always stressing out, you know, you got to start off with good birds, you know, proper stock, and you know, the physical part, keeping them in physical condition, like something that you believe in also. You can't expect those birds to do good if they're not in physical good shape.
Right.
You got to make sure that they don't have no parasites.
Right.
You know, I know for a fact that Jerry talked about one time that days before the fly, you know, like more than 10 days at least, you know, he's deworming them, giving them a little, you know, little antibiotics and stuff like that, you know, because you got to keep them lean and mean, and you can't do none of that stuff if the birds got parasites or they're not in good physical condition. Do you agree with that, John?
Oh, definitely, and that's something we didn't bring up. We should. That's why I'm saying your young birds, when you're weaning them, make sure you feed them really good, give them a good mix to eat, and as they get a little older and you got them flying, you got them kidding and stuff, then you can start messing with the feed a little bit, but always make sure. You know, like I've seen a lot of the guys do with their A-team and stuff, when they feed them, they go in and grab the birds and handle them to make sure they're not getting too skinny. It's very much paying attention, and remember, if your birds are down and they got something running through them, you're not going to fly a good kid of birds. So make sure your health, always clean water, clean feed, you know, keep things under control. Make sure you don't have them in any kind of condition where they can get wet when it rains, and where the wind blows. If you get some bad wind, you know, you got to have some circulation, but you don't want them to be in a draft. So you know, these are things you got to look for. Like I say, always what I do every morning, I come out here and I look at my birds, my holdover birds. I feed them like I feed kit birds. I feed them in the tray, and I make sure they all come down to eat. Always keep an eye on that. When you feed your kit birds, when you feed them in a tray or however you may feed them, you throw that feed in there, stay and watch for a little bit. Make sure that every one of those birds goes down and eat, because if one of them doesn't go down and eat, there's something going on. So again, guys, paying attention is number one above everything.
Yeah, we have this saying that we say out here in Southern California. I don't know how far this video is going to go. My birds don't need nothing. Just open the box and let them fly.
You know,
I breed for them to roll. That's why they roll. Right, John?
Right
You know
on.
what I mean? Hey, man, I don't keep anything that doesn't roll, you know?
You know, guys, they've got all of the pigeon supply places got some real, the probiotics that are available for pigeons now are tremendous. I mean, and if you see your droppings are getting kind of loose or whatever's going on, run the probiotics through them for 2
A
or 3
teaspoon per
days.
gallon, that does wonders.
Yeah, it's really a good thing. And, you know, maybe do it for 3-4 days, you know, and then give them clean water. And if you need to run it for another couple of days, run it. The probiotics are not going to hurt anything. It's not a medication. It's not going to tear the birds down, but it's really a good shot in the butt for them.
That is a wonderful product. I'm going to tell you something. That keeps them on peak much longer.
Yes, it
You know,
does.
that's what that does.
It really does. So that's why I go in the third day with these vitamins and minerals. And it probably wouldn't hurt anything to throw some probiotics in the water for that day.
Yes. Because I've seen some of the top roller guys, you know, where they keep them so peaked out, and man, you can tell they can't do another day like that,
Yeah.
you know. And you know, most of these lines are that the guys are flying are pretty well line bred, inbred, you know. So it's a plus. Probiotics. Jed's carries it, doesn't it?
Yeah, Jed's or Foy's or all the pigeon supplies. Everybody's got some probiotics. You can get on the line on the internet and order it. Get on some of the racing homer sites. They got some of the best stuff that you can get. You know, it's just something to keep your birds in top shape.
Yeah.
And like I say, look at the feather mites. If you're getting the little feather lice and they got pinholes in their feathers, you know, either there's some good dip on the market where you can dip them all or spray them or do something to get rid of, like we here in Southern California get these dreaded pigeon flies. Those are really a pain in the butt because those are bloodsuckers, and you've got to get rid of that kind of stuff. So just keep an eye on your birds at all time, and you'll do much better with them if they're really healthy.
Okay, John, we're done here. Let's do a little shout out, John. Who would you like to give a shout out to? You know, and we were talking about bumps in the road and shout out,
Well,
John.
I'd like to
Come
give
on, John,
like to
Vandenbroek.
give a
You're pretty
shout
famous
out.
in this area now.
I give a good shout out to a good dear friend up in Idaho, Kenny Billings. We're going to do this National Fraternity Classic fly, and all you guys that entered it, kudos to all of you. It's going to be a great event. We're going to make this thing really hum. Next year, we're hoping that we get one of these things going on the East Coast, in the Midwest, and up here on, you know, like maybe. And Kenny says he wants to do it every year, so we'll see what goes on. And you know, again, when you send birds somewhere, it's like the racing homer guys. Make sure you send nice, healthy pigeons. And I'm looking forward to this thing starting. We're still a couple months away from it, but the response we had was fantastic. In 3 days, we filled up 50 entries. Actually, well, 3 to 4 days, I'll say.
Good.
But
good.
a shout out to everybody that's flying their birds and doing well in all of these flies that are going on.
Yeah.
And remember, you know, no bad mouthing the judges, no matter who they are. Okay?
The bumps in the road are always going to be
Yeah.
there, John. Right,
So-
John?
Right.
You know.
Because it's getting tough. You know, if you don't score the birds, you're an ass. If you overscore them, you're an ass. So I don't know where the middle of the road is, but
Yeah. Don't get discouraged, man, because I've seen people get discouraged recently, you know.
And-
We won't
and-
mention any names and stuff like that, but don't get discouraged, man.
And
It's
there's
just
an old
bumps in the road, man.
there's an old
you know.
saying, you know, if you could fly better birds, I'd be a better judge. So
Yeah.
that helps a lot too.
Some of us need a horseshoe, you know, on our kit box, you know what I mean, just to
But
fly regular,
again,
you know.
like another shout to my Dutch camaraderie, Heine Biker, for winning the 4th time the World Cup. Stop and think about that. That's fantastic.
And when you win it 4 times, you got to be
Yeah.
good.
And I think he placed in the top 10 a couple of other times. So, guy can fly some pigeons.
How about a shout out to your buddy out there in England, John?
John Weenless.
Yeah, give a shout
Yeah,
out to John.
Always have a lot of fun with John. But you know, one of these guys, one of these days, maybe I'll go to England and judge some pigeons.
How about our famous young guy, Austin Benjamin? Give a shout out to Austin Benjamin.
is, that if you guys haven't been on the website that we put together for this classic event, Austin Benjamin was very instrumental in putting that together. And if you guys are on Roller World, Austin's all the time with his opinion. And for a young guy, and I think he's only 21 or 22, he's got opinions.
Well, we need people like that because
Yes.
it sort of keeps down the, it sort of dominates the pecking order.
Right. I mean, it's all good and fine as long as you stay clean and don't call names and holler and scream about things.
Yeah, even Dr. Laurent is good for the fancy, man. I mean,
Laurent.
Dr. Laurent, man. I mean, the doc. He does talk about good things in there, and it keeps the mind stimulated, man. I mean, it keeps us pushing forward. I mean, if you're going backwards or down, that's, who wants to do that? But if it's moving forward and trying to elevate it to a higher level, what's wrong with that? Right, Big John?
Yeah, and then just like you say, once you get a family of birds started, guys, just work the family because you probably got the best birds in your own backyard. It would beat going out and spending thousands of dollars importing birds from somewhere, or work your own birds. And if finally you come to an agreement someday along the line, you come to say, oh, my birds really suck. Well, then maybe you got to move somewhere. But everybody's got some good ones. Everybody's got some bad ones. You just have to separate the wheat from the chaff.
We've got some more videos coming up. We're going to do a tribute to Bill Barrett. This is going to be dynamite. I put a lot of work into it. John and I have already talked about it, sort of rehearsed over it. It's going to be a very good video. We hope that you enjoyed the tribute to O.D. Harris. And it's a shame that we couldn't put the O.D. Harris video. We don't have copyrights to that. Bill McRae, John Huntington, Huntington or whatever, they're the ones that did the video, and we don't want to get in trouble. But that's a very, very good video. We bounced off that video, right, Big John?
That's right.
And the whole thing of it, you guys, is that there's some stuff that was said years ago that it's good today, and it's still going to be good tomorrow. And Bill Barrett is the same thing, I never met Bill Barrett, okay? I never went to England or nothing, but I'm going to tell you something. He was a